Welcome back to another episode of City Life Uncensored. Pretty excited today because, we do mostly long-term rentals in the real estate space and more diving into the short-term stuff, right? And so, having the best here in Pittsburgh and, probably soon taking it national. So pretty excited to kind of watch your growth. We got Chad Weiss here from HostWise. So welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to you kind of diving into some of the ins and outs of the short-term space, brother.
Tell you what I know.
Yeah, right. It's
not all the secrets, but
yeah, we were chatting, right? It's like, well, I'm not the algorithm, so I can't tell you that. I just got to kind of live by it, right? But which I want to get into that a little bit with you too, because every time you talk about Airbnb and even just all platforms and what, it's all about the algorithm all the time, right? And so you're living that on a daily basis.
And what's wild is we still refer to them as Airbnbs. Like they're short-term rentals. Short-term rentals don't have a good buzzy name. It's sometimes when I tell people, they're like, what are you short-term renting? Like they think like tools or cars, and it's like, no, it's Airbnb. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and that means Airbnb won, right? That means they dominate the space.
Nobody says like Vrbo.
I was actually literally about to ask you, like, what is their number one competitor? Because I don't even know.
I mean, Vrbo's taking a little bit of market share from them. Booking.com is becoming a lot bigger.
Really?
Interesting. Yeah. So Booking.com's problem is they had too much fraud and they didn't have a payment platform. So you would have a lot of fake bookings and fraudulent bookings. In the last 12 months, they started doing payments by booking. So now they control that just like Airbnb does. So if they get defrauded, it's their problem. But they just have a lot more controls around that. So
interesting.
Booking is really nipping at the heels.
Are you on Booking?
Yeah.
And you're on VRBO?
Yep. And
or
Airbnb and Marriott and my direct booking site. So, and then I have a couple others that I'm experimenting with, like Hello Landing and a couple like more midterm stays.
So you're working on every platform individually?
Yeah. So I use what's called a channel manager.
That's what I was going to ask. Is there
that does all the work for you. So it doesn't do all the work for you, but it manages all those different channels. So you can set different price points. So like Marriott, even though they have the worst website by far, they get a lot of travelers because people are familiar with Marriott, but they charge an 18% commission versus a 15% commission on Booking.com. So those two channels, I have to mark my pricing up higher because if you leave your pricing the same, you leave a bunch of money on the table. So what's
Airbnb's commission?
So the guest pays around 14% on average, and then I only pay 3%. So if I set my price at $100, I get 97. Versus if I set my price at $100 on Booking.com, I only get 85. And if you do it on Marriott, then you only get they take 18%, so you're getting 82 from.
And then they're probably all charging the booker something different too.
Booking doesn't charge that commission, and Marriott doesn't charge that commission. It comes out of my pocket, but people don't necessarily realize this, so they don't set their pricing properly. And sometimes you don't.
It's ultimately the same price, I guess, then for the booker. Then if you raise your prices, you just have to know that. Like
I charge more for Vrbo because there's slightly higher risk because I own the booking. So with Vrbo, if it's a fraudulent charge,
explain that.
And it comes out of my pocket. Like if a guest disputes the charge, like if they book on Airbnb, hate the experience, and then try to dispute it, like Airbnb might lose the dispute, but it doesn't come out of my pocket. For Vrbo, or Booking.com, well, not Booking anymore, but for Vrbo or my direct site, if they book and they dispute it with their credit card. I don't know if you guys have had to deal with credit card disputes.
Yeah, we did. I just had one came in an email yesterday through our payment provider. We're all long-term rental, but still, someone.
The one Airbnb I had, we had to deal with it all the time. Actually,
it's hard to win. Yeah. Like I had someone that she booked and her credit card failed on the first payment. And then the next two went through, and then she switched cards, and she could not wrap her head around the fact she only paid half. She paid in full, but she disputed with her credit card. I showed all the evidence, showed screenshots of Stripe that she's only paid these, the full amount, and I lost. Like it cost me $500. I'm gonna take her to small claims court on principle.
Was that through VRBO?
Yeah.
Not on Airbnb?
Yeah, it was Verbal.
Yeah, because I think he's saying, right, so just to make sure I understand it, right, you're basically saying on Airbnb, that exact situation, it's on Airbnb, you get your 500, Airbnb got to go fight her to get the 500, and it's up to them.
I have to fight the algorithm on Airbnb, but outside of that, like I know I'm going to get paid. and I have a higher likelihood of having better guests because they have a screening process and they do a good job of shutting down potential parties. Sometimes too good a job, like they won't let people book that I feel comfortable with, and then we'll direct them to our direct booking site and take the reservation. But, you know, booking.com and Vrbo, there's 0 screening. So we use a screening tool called Safely that allows us to do a little bit of a background check for guests. Okay. And we ask a lot of questions too. Like if it's, you know, we'll see the phone number, see if it's somebody local, it's a one-night reservation, like Spidey sense tingling pretty hard, and reach out to the guests and see what kind of story. And, you know.
So basically we don't want to be booking Brian Kirshner.
Yeah. You know, we almost never have parties. We believe we're a member of the community and we want to be good neighbors. Like, I'm not going to pretend we've never had parties because it does happen.
Yeah.
But like, we use minute decibel meters in every property. And I don't know if you're familiar with minutes, but they're awesome. I
wish they were. I didn't hear of it whenever I had the Airbnb, but yeah.
Well, you're honest. You better describe it now to us.
So
hold on. By the way, we're getting like really into this education process right now. So let's keep going here, but then we got to back up, but keep going.
Yeah. So a minute device is think of it as like a smoke detector. It's mounted on your ceiling. But it monitors decibels, it monitors occupancy, it has a Bluetooth sensor so it can pick up how many iOS devices are in there. The new model actually has a smoke detector for cigarette smoke. It monitors humidity and temperature. And I'm missing something, but our process is if the decibel meter goes off, then I look to see who the reservation is, because it could be like, you know, they said they're 70 and they're in town with their family. Like, if they're having game night, I don't care. But if I look and it's a one-night booking and it's someone that, you know, might be local, then I'm like, all right, I gotta look at the camera. And we have a camera at the front door everywhere. And then I look at that and see if there's people streaming in or not. And if that's happening, then I'm on the guest. Like, shut it down, or else I'm calling the police. Like, I'll go over and bang on doors, or I'll send somebody over. Like, we've only had 4 parties in the last 2 years.
Do you have those in every house?
Yeah, 100%. Like, it is a non.
What's that cost?
The device is
like, what's your I guess called the device plus the camera plus kind of the security-ish setup that you will.
$100.
Okay, that's not bad at all.
The device is a one-time cost of like $59 or $79, I don't remember, and then the subscription is $79 a year. And then the Nest, I use Nest cameras because they're just easy and they integrate into my system. And those, cameras $150, and then if you pay for the subscription, it's like $30 or something like that. So it's affordable, peace of mind. Like, I don't know how people in this industry don't have these devices. Like, I would have.
I've never even heard of it. I mean, I'm not in the industry, but I've never even heard of it.
A lot of people haven't, especially like all the professionals have. You have Noise Aware or Party Squasher or Minute. Like, anybody that's a professional, if they don't have them, you should not use them as your property manager. Like, that's gross, and I just think it's irresponsible.
Yeah,
like,
they
need to exist.
$150 one time up front, and then $80 a year. It sounds like an absolute no-brainer.
You have one minor party, and it's going to cost you $1,500 in damage.
Yeah,
I'd probably still own my Airbnb if I knew about that.
Yeah,
3 years ago.
They are.
Well, yeah, you also had parties with shootings, and
because we didn't monitor.
Right.
We vetted a lot. Like, we vetted like crazy, but we had a house in Southside on the slopes with a pool.
Yeah,
we knew what kind of crowd we were getting.
You definitely have that. Like, I don't mind if people have friends over to a certain extent, but like, there's a big difference between a party and like a gathering.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll have people argue with me like, oh, we're not having a party, but we're gonna have like 20 people over. I'm like, nah, that's a party. Like, my place sleeps 8. Like,
like, depending on the location, and
right.
I
if you have any neighbors, like we manage Jeremy Raymer's house and
shout out Jeremy.
Yeah, in Lawrenceville, and he doesn't like. There's not like a bunch of neighbors around, so we have a backyard. Like, not we're allowing parties, but like we have a fire pit back there. Like, got a solo stove. We don't mind having
some friends over, right?
You can have a bigger gathering.
Right. Like, if you have 8 people there when it sleeps, 5 or 6, like, not a big deal.
Yep.
Like, but we have places where it's a row home and you have 4 houses in a row, and if you're loud in this one, like, you piss off 12 neighbors.
Yeah.
Like, we don't allow anything like that. And the minute devices, they now are the newest model, can sit outside. So you can put it outside and monitor that space. And they have, AI is the buzzy word. They use AI to see if it's wind blowing or it's voices. So those alert us. So we have those in our outdoor spaces too, because we want to be a good neighbor. Like, we take it very seriously.
Yeah. So you don't, hey, you're going to have a party, but no one's coming in, so the house is fine. But we had 85 people in our backyard till 4 a.m.
If every one of your neighbors hates the short-term rentals,
Don't worry.
and the other 2,000 short-term rentals in the city, they piss off their neighbors too. All of a sudden, you have exponential growth of people that hate it, and that's when you run into a situation like Denver, where you can only rent your primary residence, and that's it. So they've
Wait, what?
Yeah, Denver is primary residence rule, so you can't rent your house in Denver unless you live there permanently.
Wow.
If you get caught, you go to jail. It's
Short term or just rental? And
short term. Yeah. Like if you rent your house in Denver and you get caught because it's not your house, like it's a investment property, like it's a felony called lying to government officials, and they will arrest you. Like they have put people in jail for it out there.
Are you worried that's going to start moving to other places?
A little bit, yeah. But Denver was one of the first ones to pass this regulation, and cities are getting smarter about it. I mean, the amount of tax dollars that are generated in this industry is wild. And, you know, there's a 14% tax on it. 7% of that goes to Allegheny County and 7% goes to the state. And Airbnb and Vrbo collect that and pay it to the city. So it's not like we have to self-report. So they're generating a lot of money.
So it's less risky for them. It's guaranteed income. That's really not risky.
I mean, it's millions of dollars that the city, well, not the city doesn't get it, but Allegheny County gets it. So it's not in their best interest to shut it down. Unless it gets so bad that everybody's angry with it. So, you know, we have Steelstra, which is the Steel City Short-Term Rental Alliance. And the idea behind that is, you know, helping teach hosts to be good hosts and communicating with the, you know, not just hosts, like we want it to be the local businesses like restaurants and bars. I mean, they benefit from it too, because if all of the tourists are staying downtown, like all the places, you know, you have like the Trip Hotel in Lawrenceville, but I think that's pretty much it. Like you don't get these people out into the areas where they can spend money as easily. So there's a whole ecosystem around short-term rentals that, you know, and even just cleaners and things like that. I mean, it's not just hosts and it's not just investors that are making money off of this industry. I mean, I think last I checked, like Pittsburgh short-term rentals generated $55 million in the last 12 months. Like it's significant. This isn't a hobby.
So you're looking at what, $7 million in revenue between the Fed and between the county and the state.
It's not small.
Yeah,
and it's growing. You know, where if you look at the charts on number of nights booked, like we're at records. So occupancy's down a little bit just due to the number of them, but like the consumer adoption is real.
Supply keeps going up, right? So therefore, it looks like it's less, but demand's continuing to rise, but supply's rising at a higher rate.
Supply is outstripping demand right now.
Yeah. Let's go economics, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So you have,
I feel smart.
I was going to say, you know your numbers for the business.
Yeah, you sure do.
I mean,
the industry shit.
Maybe a good transition in the background.
Yeah. So I got one really quick question, and then I want to hit the rewind button, right? The minutes device. From a security, not security, but do you have to disclose that to your tenants?
So because it's not a recording device, it only has a decibel meter. You don't, you know, on Airbnb, you have to put like anything as a recording device, which also includes, we put a smart home speaker. So like a Google Mini in each place, because I love it. Like I have it in my house. I talk to Alexa all the time. Like she's the one that talks to me sometimes. But that's considered a recording device. So I have to disclose that, which is stupid because Airbnb also only gives you 250 characters to explain it. The minute you don't have to, but they recommend putting it in your listing. So I put it in there in like security, but I don't put it in the security devices particular area because I don't have enough room for it. But, you know, I'm not hiding from it. My favorite potential guests are the ones that cancel because they find out I have a camera or a decibel meter.
Yeah,
because I just dodged a bullet.
Yep.
Like
100%. So you want to, but it's like, what's the most priority wise? What's the most important to put on a listing? It's tough. So I get that, right?
Yeah, like I want, you know, if a guest requests to book on Airbnb, doesn't have any reviews, we send them a message, and it says we have cameras, we have decibel meters, no parties, no pets, like no guests without letting us know. And if they withdraw, I'm like, thank God.
Yeah.
Like that's somebody else's problem now. Like, and then sometimes if they're like, oh yeah, we're having a party, like we have our Facebook group in the city. There's like 500 hosts in it now, and it's super useful. Like we share like, hey, this person messaged us and they're looking to have a party. Like, heads up, everybody. So
That's beautiful.
we'll try to help block them, because nobody benefits from a party. Hosts don't benefit, neighbors don't benefit. I mean, the guest kind of benefits, but
they get away.
They want to trash your house instead of their own.
Their own.
Like, that's why you book an Airbnb, because you don't want to have to clean up after yourself.
Yeah. Wow. That was pretty awesome. I did not expect the start of that, because usually we start with the come up, right? So like, we got to know a little bit about you. Is
how
where
did
we
you get to that?
how to like holy cow, right? So let's smack that rewind button real fast, and we'll keep it brief, right? Because the amount of education you pour in on that short term is obviously amazing here. But like, how did you get there, man? So give us the come up.
So I'm a nerd by nature. I grew up in Butler County. I grew up in, Saxonburg area, in farm country, I call it. But, we're only 45 minutes from Pittsburgh up there. But like, Pittsburgh is the big scary city. So like, we only came to Pittsburgh whenever we went to like a Pirates game. And like, don't look at anybody, keep your head down, like, scary giant city.
Yeah. It's like, you can't even cross the river. Like, people in the city don't want to cross the river, let alone come in 45 minutes in.
I literally didn't know a single person from the South Hills until I went to college. Like, that might as well been Mexico to us. Like, when I met people at school and they're like, oh yeah, I'm from the South Hills. I'm like, where's that at? They're like, well, just through the tunnel. I'm like, what tunnel? Like, my first time on a plane was 19 years old. I flew to Cancun for spring break. My dad doesn't like to fly, so we had a motorhome and we drove the motorhome everywhere.
What did your dad do for a living growing up?
So I grew up in construction. So growing up in farm country, my parents own a flooring company called Dr. Tao Flooring. My brother still works there. Nice. My parents are still there. So like, I grew up doing construction.
One brother?
Yeah, one brother.
Older, younger?
Younger.
Nice.
So we're kind of polar opposites. My brother's 5'8", can't grow a beard to save his life, and I'm 6'2", so we're very different, to the point where I was a skier, he was a snowboarder. Like, we
literally everything.
We get along great now, but growing up we're very different.
I've got two older brothers too, and it was a lot of fighting going on all the time.
We get along great now. We're only 2 years different, but just very different people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up there, so I grew up in construction. Didn't know, I knew I was going to go to college. Like, I'm smart kid, but had no idea what I wanted to do. Like, never really had to try hard in school. Like, I could study for 30 minutes for the test and do well. So I went to Pitt.
A natural nerd, right?
Yeah. For sure. Like, a personality type is, Myers-Briggs is INTP. Like, I'm a logician, and I'm just naturally a very curious person. So like, I used to read a book a night. But I went to college. I originally went to.
I don't even think I read a book.
And I would I would hear my parents coming up to bed, and then I would hide the flashlight. Yeah. And then whenever they went, like, I'm a night owl by nature. Like,
that's dedication to reading, bro.
I went to bed at 5 a.m. last night. Like, I just stay up all night because there's like, for one, it's quiet. Like, I don't have
that's the peaceful time.
Yeah. Like, my business partner, she's a morning person. She's up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's like, we'll hand off sometimes. Like, I'll send her a note. Excuse me. I'll send her a note at 5 a.m. and she'll answer. I'm like, I'm going to bed, but here's the situation. Like, this is what we have to deal with.
Take it from here. Mm-hmm. That's kind of good though, right?
Someone's always working.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. Now that we're bigger, like, I have a full team of virtual assistants in the Philippines and Bolivia.
How big?
So 5 total.
Nice.
So we have 24/7 coverage. Like, if my team hasn't responded to a guest in 3 minutes, I'm on their ass about it.
Wow.
Like, there's none of this like wait till morning stuff. Like, and if it's a lockout, it better be a minute or less, because you don't want somebody standing at the door. Because your very first thought when the key doesn't work is, fuck, I got scammed. Like, they're worried that the place doesn't work, or like, no one's going to answer me for 8 hours, and what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Like, your brain starts spinning.
I could already tell you going down that customer service route, but yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Back to background. So I originally went to school.
So easy for us on this to get swayed.
But I went to school. I started for ecology and environmental study. I wanted to work in a rainforest, discover new species, and then I started reading about how much money I can make, and I was like, I can't live.
We got this dude right now that basically read a book a night with a flashlight to wanting to work in the rainforest.
Yeah,
discovering new species.
And then I was like, well, I switched majors to chem and bio. So I double majored in chemistry and biology. I had no idea what I wanted to do with it, but I was like, well,
hey, Brian, what'd you major in, bud?
I don't even know. I was like health and phys ed. I had a couple of DUIs, so I didn't even know how to go to the... I realized you can't even be a teacher in PA with DUIs. I was like, fuck, I'm going to school for something I can't even get a job in.
So. That would have been a good thing to know. So I graduated with chem and bio majors, and I got a job at PPG as a lab technician for 9 months. So I was a shy kid growing up, and even through college, like I hated talking on the phone. I hated I had never given a public speech or anything like that. And then I worked in a lab, and I was like, this is fucking awful. Like I call it my office space job. Every day was the worst day of my life. Like I remember, like it was like a 35-minute drive to the job. And there was a tree beside the road. And every time I drove past it, I'm like, I could just clip that fucker. Like, it wasn't like trying to kill myself. It was like, if I could just damage my car enough, I won't have to go to work anymore.
Jeez.
And I only did it for like 9 months, but I had a job, well, not a job, but I did this thing in college for Student City, which was a spring break company. So tying into like,
I remember that.
my first flight down to Cancun, I found a flyer on campus. And
where'd you go?
I went to Cancun.
No, I'm sorry. Where'd you go to college?
Pitt Johnstown.
Pitt Johnstown. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't want to be in a city. I didn't know why anybody wanted to live in a city. Like I was a farm kid, and then after the chemistry job, like the lab tech job, from me finding those flyers, I used to sell spring break trips on campus, just like find people that would organize. And like I was shy, but I was a hustler. Like as a little kid in elementary school, like I would go buy candy with my mom at Sam's Club and then sell it to the kids in school.
Love that.
So I had a little canister of money at any given time. So I did that, and I got to know the people at Student City. So they offered me a job in sales. And I quickly realized that at that chemistry job, the only way to actually make money was to like be good with people. My boss, he was an interesting character, but he went to school for 9 years. He had a PhD, and he's like, and I was trying to figure out my path in life, and I was like, is there an opportunity for a full-time job here? And he's like, you really need at least a master's, if not a PhD in chemistry to get a job. And he's like, I went to school for 9 years. He's like, I'm a master in my field. He's like, I don't even make $100,000 a year. And I was like, well, fuck that. Like, I want to do a lot better than that. He's like, go to school, get your MBA. You'll come back as my boss making twice as much. Ended up not getting my MBA, but that spring break job, like I was terrible at it when I started because I hated talking on the phone, and I literally had a sales job on the phone. But I forced myself out of my comfort zone because I knew I could. And then I started going.
I mean, at the end of the day, you were taking action, right? And something,
right. Like,
what you knew would be a better future.
Right. Like I knew if I could start interacting with people, I would do well. So to the point where I was going to college campuses and like going door to door, knocking on fraternity and sorority doors, and whoever answered that door, my job was to sell them a spring break trip or figure out who was organizing that trip. And I got good at it. I was the second, number 2 in the company.
Wow.
But this was 2007, whenever everything was melting down. The company started doing some shady things. Like they started changing the price on people after they booked. And I told my boss, I was like, I'm not doing it. And he's like, you'll do whatever the fuck I tell you to do. And I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work out. So I ended up leaving there, and I got a job at Ariba downtown as a consultant. And it was funny because they told me
coming into the big city now, huh?
Yeah. So I moved back from Boston to Pittsburgh.
Oh, you moved to Boston for that
I moved
job?
To Boston for that
wow,
job.
Okay.
I was making $40,000 a year living in Boston.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Paycheck up there.
But in the city, or were you still on the outskirts?
I was in Somerville.
Okay.
Somerville and Malden.
Okay.
So
I was gonna say, at that pay, there's no way you could live in the city.
And there's no happy hour. It's illegal up there. So not only does it cost me a lot of money to live, I couldn't even afford to drink really. So moved back to Pittsburgh, bought a house, got that job with Ariba, and they hired me at Ariba because they said, like, based on your background, we know you're smart. We know you don't know anything about this was sourcing work. So strategic sourcing, reverse auctions, that kind of thing. Like,
what product?
What's that?
What product?
So we were a consulting group. Ariba sold, so they were the market leader in sourcing software. So basically any company, like I think 96 of the Fortune 100 used Ariba software. So how these companies purchase is with, reverse. At the time, it was like reverse auctions were all the rage. So you know how auctions work, where you bid the price up. Reverse auction is in reverse. So if you want to buy, $10 million worth of widgets, or 10 million widgets, and your starting price is $1, you put it into an auction, and you end up letting suppliers compete on that and get it down to 85 cents. So my very first auction at Ariba was 2008 at the time. It was a national bank who was facing the mortgage meltdown, and they were doing these mortgage reworks. And I had never done a reverse auction, barely knew what it was. Like, this was my first project, and I ended up saving them 93%, and it was $100 million bid. So I saved this national bank $93 million, and I was making it up as I went.
Yeah, making up as you went. You were probably only making out of that 93 million, maybe what, 50 grand?
So I started at Ariba at like 47,000.
Yeah.
But I was in my early 20s, and like, if I can be a consultant, like, and not have an MBA, like, I'm going to do it. So they hired me. I worked there for a couple of years, and then I got hired by Alvarez and Marsal. So I worked there in private equity consulting. We are the number one consulting firm in the world for private equity. Like, I had no business. What
was your major role there?
So I left the firm as a director, but our job, my elevator pitch is I fix companies. So we worked for private equity owned companies. So the PE firm would buy companies, and then they have an exit strategy. So they'd figure out how to make money. Because the EBITDA, the multiplier was about 10x, 10 to 12x. So, simple math is 10x. So if I can save that company $1, then the company is worth $10 more. So we go and save $3 million. They'd make $30 million. They'd only pay us like $300,000. So it was like a 30x return for the PE, the holding company. So they loved us. So we would go in. My role was
really quick, probably irrelevant, but I'm just personally very curious about this because I love this space. Were you guys owned by a PE firm and they would buy it, or would you work for many different PE firms basically for hire?
Yeah, we were. So when I started at A&M, I was like the 40th person in what's called the Pepe Group, was private equity performance improvement. But A&M got its start as turnaround and restructuring. So half of our revenue came from turnaround and restructuring. Like we did the
and that was for hire, essentially, not for one.
Yeah, it's consulting hours. Yeah. So just like a lawyer consulting. Yeah. But we did the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, like WAMU, Blockbuster, Toys R Us, pretty much any big name bankruptcy the firm did. That's why people hear A&M and they don't know what it is. Because if you heard A&M was coming, you're like, oh, we're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, our group wasn't that way. We just came in and helped companies become more profitable. And I wasn't one of the Bobs. We didn't come in and fire a bunch of people. It was more of like process. My role was on like the procurement side of things. Okay. So I was the interim chief procurement officer of a coffee roaster, $400 million coffee roaster. I was the interim CPO of a $1 billion food distribution company. Sometimes I would do what was called rapid results, where we would go in, figure out what was wrong. I called it flipping over rocks to find money. Like, we just interview everybody and figure out what was wrong. So like, I'm really good at just hearing things. And you interview 5 different people and hear what they tell you, and you can tell who's bullshitting you and who's not, and you can kind of figure out where the problems lie. Because everybody thinks I'm there to fire them, and I'm not. But if you suck, I might be. But we would see who's lying to us, and then also figure out where the problems lie.
Yep.
And a lot of people will tell you all the problems, but it's the things that irritate them and not what actually moves a needle. Like, you'll get into it and they're like, oh, this process sucks. Like, and it's like, well, that's worth $50,000. Like, let's find the $1 million kind of opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this. I mean, so similarly, but a little bit different. I was in consulting finance transformation. It was essentially the same thing. The reason that I got out of it and didn't love it was because, we'd go into these companies and the bosses would want us. It was all about head cutting. So fix a process to cut heads.
Yeah.
I've always been about job creation. To your point, it's not really about job cut. It's about fixing the process, creating streamlines of which, yes, you eliminate people, but you scale the company and get more jobs at the end of the day.
You get more done with the same amount of people.
Yeah.
Like,
and scale, right? So you can grow.
Right. You get rid of the bottlenecks that is either choking the company off from growth. Like, we didn't do marketing. Like, that wasn't our role. Like, I was on the operations side. So it was like, how does that business work and how do we make it more profitable from that perspective?
Yeah, love that. So you were there for 10 years?
Yeah, I was there for just short of 10 years.
Wow.
So when COVID happened, we stopped traveling. I traveled 45 weeks a year, or on average. Wow. 3 nights a week. I'd leave Monday morning. That was my commute, and I would fly to wherever the client was. Our engagements were anywhere from a month to 18 months. So it kind of just depended on what the project was. And we were growing so fast, it wasn't necessarily like, this is your background, like this is where you'll fit. Like I did finance a little bit, and like I knew nothing about
problem
finance.
solver.
Yeah, I'm a problem solver. I can figure shit out. Like that is my skill set. Like there's no problem that I can't figure out. I can Google like a champ. Like I can figure out things. But like I've sat in meetings with like CFOs. Like my boss at the time, you know, boss is a loose term in consulting. You don't really have a boss. You just have a leader on your project. And he put me in, he's like, I don't know anything about finance. He's like, but this guy wants to fix his finance organization. He's like, so go sit with him. And I'm like, I don't even know what finance rules are, man. And he's like, well, you'll figure it out. This CEO or this CFO
should have called me. That was my thing.
He just was on fire in this meeting. And he's like, what do you think about the FP&A? Like, how many FP&A people should I need? And I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck FP&A means. Like, I don't know what they do. And I was like, yeah, that's a really good point. Like, let me think about this.
You got to just
go
keep
into my boss's office, and I'm like, what do I do? I'm like, he just said a bunch of acronyms. I don't even know what it means. Like, I don't know how to organize his industry. Like, he's got a main branch here, a main branch there. I'm like, he's like, figure it out. He's like, come back to me and let's review it. And that's what I did. And like, the guy's like, yeah, this is great. I'm like, I just made that shit up. And like, you paid me $7.50 an hour to do
That's
this.
amazing.
But you know, it works. Like never had a project that failed. Like,
I'll tell you what, I mean, it's an incredibly, it's hard to define it, right? But it's such an underrated skill set. The ability to solve problems, figure things out on the fly, it's worth its weight in gold. I mean, because it's such a unique ability.
Well, actually being able to see those problems too from like those companies, that's insane. Being able to see all those different problems.
There's a lot of people that can bullshit their way through a meeting, but they're not good at problem solving. Eventually they get caught. And there's a lot of people that can see the problem, but they have a tough time communicating what it was. Like I worked with a lot of these people. Like some of the smartest people in the world worked at the firm. Like when I left Ariba, I thought I was really good at what I did. And then like in the first 2 weeks, like at A&M, I was like, holy shit.
These dudes are smart.
These are some smart people. Yeah. So I loved it because I learned a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you were leveled up at the end of the day, right? Like get yourself around people that are smarter than you and you're going to learn and grow.
Like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Every time.
That's, you don't want to be one of those people.
I talk about that all the time in the real estate space, right? Which we'll get into, but I mean, look, if you are the smartest person in the room, to your point, like you're at your capacity, you're at your maximum, right? So you've got to be joining these groups, right? And people always talk about cults and this and that in these mastermind groups, and you've already touched on it, right, earlier today with the what's it called again on the Steel City side?
Oh, we have the Pittsburgh Airbnb group.
Yeah,
and then I have the professional operators group that I'm in. That's only 70 of us. Like it's our mastermind.
Yeah.
Group.
So. But getting in there, you're going to find those people where you can bounce ideas. And it's not about always being the smartest, but find people that are smarter than you in the areas of which you need to get better at, right? Yeah. And so maybe we're the smartest in the room around overall X, whatever that X is, but this person has this niche where they're way better than you, and so you're going to be able to learn and grow and develop from them specifically. It's everything in business.
Right.
I mean,
if you're the guy that just only talks the whole time and doesn't listen, you're not going to get anything out of it. Yeah. Sure, you can share knowledge and make yourself feel good for being that person, but like
pad your ego, right? Like that ain't growing anything,
right? But you also like if you only sit there and only listen the whole time, then you're not going to get invited into the room because you don't provide any value.
Yeah.
In it. But in consulting, you had to think on your feet because you're in a boardroom, you have a $500 million company and the CEO asks you a question and there's not really like, I don't know. Like you can use the, let me get back to you or, hey, that's a good point. But a lot of it is like, you got to know your numbers. Like I'm a numbers guy by nature. Like I stare at numbers. I'm very analytical. But like if they ask me a number on my project, like I better know it or better get real close to it. So it was
I used to talk about that to the younger staff all of the time. When you go to these meetings, just be prepared.
Yeah.
And if you're not, don't try to lie around the case.
Right.
Just be honest about it.
Never lie. Like you can there's ways to dance.
Relationship sales is what I call it, which you just dancing.
Yeah, you dance and give yourself outs.
Yeah.
Like never say always, never say never. Like you can say I think. Like there's ways to like weasel. So if you did say something wrong, you go back and be like, hey, you know how I said I thought it was 30 million, it was actually 22 million. And they'll, smart CEO appreciates that.
Yeah,
They're not
100%.
gonna like hammer you, but you better fix your mistake because if you throw out that number and don't fix it, and he goes and tells the board that you just said you can save 30 million, you actually only meant 3 million, like you will get crucified because you just made your who's paying your bills look
like
bad,
yeah.
and there's no coming back from that. So you throw a number out, you better be damn confident of it.
So traveling, obviously, right? So obviously, probably a good lead in all that traveling to what you do now, right?
Yeah.
So let's get into that transition a little bit, right?
So when COVID happened, we stopped traveling for the firm, and because nobody wanted you on site because we didn't know what was going to happen, and companies were nervous about spending money. Like we were expensive. My rate was $750 an hour, and I was a director, so senior directors, MDs, like they're $1,000 an hour plus.
Mm-hmm.
You better save a lot of money with that if you're going to come in, and nobody knew what was going to happen. So the firm got slow, and I had some short-term rentals. I got my very first one in 2018 in Lawrenceville, which was an arbitrage property. And arbitrage just means that you rent it as a long-term, and then you re-rent it out as a short-term rental. And I
make the spread, right?
Right. I told that landlord 2 true statements that added up to something false. I said that I travel for work a lot, and I'm not in Pittsburgh very often, which both things are true. It just implied that I would be living in Pittsburgh whenever I was in town, but I wasn't. I lived in Denver full time, but I was like, can I rent it on Airbnb whenever I'm not there? He's like, yeah, that's cool. So I got very first property. And
I mean, this was in 18.
Yeah.
So this was before the arbitrage game was even a known
Yeah, I didn't even know what it was. I talked to a college buddy who called me for advice on a career. He was like he was in finance and wanted to maybe get into consulting, and I was chatting with him, and I just bought a house in Steamboat Springs, a ski house that I gutted and remodeled. That was going to be my first short-term rental. And he's like, oh, you should talk to my friend. He's like, he does this thing where he rents out. He didn't say arbitrage. He's like, he rents places and re-rents it. I was like, that is genius.
Yeah.
So literally that night I talked to him. I got on Zillow, messaged like 8 different landlords. This one responded and said like, yeah, that's cool. So I literally was like in the process of signing a lease, and I called his friend just to connect. Because he's like, yeah, he was a lawyer. He's like, he quit, and now he's making $1 million a year doing short-term rentals.
This was in 18 still, yeah?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I talked to him, and he's like, oh, yeah, I don't do that anymore. I was like, well, I got my first lease, so let's see how it goes. But so then I didn't really do much with it, but then 2019, I started getting more property. I think I was like around 7 coming into 2020, and then the world changed, and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. So I took ads on Google, so I was trying to get my places filled because I didn't want, I had $10,000 a month in leases,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to actually book those out really well, like even into April, because everybody was escaping, the major cities, and they wanted places to live in. Because if you lived in a 400 square foot apartment in New York City with a 500
500 other people, in a condo building,
there.
yeah.
So we did well with that, and so we started
So
growing.
you'd come, a lot of those people were moving to wherever they grew up near their parents, but couldn't stay at their parents' place, whatever, right? Family.
So you ran your own Google ads, like completely separate?
Yeah,
Like
on top of it. But
smart.
I didn't have a direct booking site. I was just linking my Airbnb listings.
Yeah.
Because Airbnb also cut all advertising, and Vrbo did. So.
Yep.
Because they were trying to save money.
Yeah. I mean, the Airbnb cut like 33% of their staff or something, and like completely stopped advertising in conservation mode. So I was able to get them booked and did well with it. And we were, I saw the opportunity there. This was still like a side hustle. Like I wasn't leaving the firm. I was on a partner track. Like I was 5 years out from a 7-figure salary. Like it's a lucrative career path.
Yeah, for sure.
But through 2020. We were slower, and like I was like, wow, like there's a level of adoption here that like the trends are changing. Like you went from you stayed at an Airbnb because it was cheaper to you stayed at an Airbnb because you wanted the space, you wanted the kitchen, you didn't want to be around people. Like I had to travel to San Diego. I was working at they were a luxury car man. They made custom cars. Like these cars sold for $1.2 million or more each. And we had to fly out there. And like, this was still like in the midst of COVID. Like you had to wear a mask, and like you had to, sanitize your hands before you went in and all of that. And like, I was like, I'm not staying in a freaking hotel. Like I don't want to be trapped in an elevator with a mouth breather. So I was staying in short-term rentals out there. And I was like, there's a wave of this happening. So I decided to start growing the business during COVID when everybody else was being scared about it. So come May of 2021.
Zig when everyone else is zagging, right?
Yeah, exactly. So in March of 2021, when I was back in Pittsburgh, I met with my, she was my cleaner at the time, but calling her a cleaner is just completely unfair. She has 3 degrees. She was a nationally touring musician, like had her own studio, but she had left that because she got tired of the industry and started cleaning on the side. And then within, less than a year, she had like 83 properties she was cleaning.
Wow, yeah.
I was her.
She was a business. She was an
I was her
business
second client. So, and I met her like a few months later, in late 2018. Was like, "You're cool." I'm like, "You want to do more of this?" It's like I was never here. Like I lived in Denver. Like she found places. Like I would find them online and I'd have her go look at it, and she was like, "Yay or nay," and we would stage them and get them listed. So, I met with her in March, and I was like, I'm thinking about quitting the firm and doing this full time. Like I'd built the HostWise website, like kind of my approach. At the time, it was to convert long-term landlords into short-term. So like kind of the model, I would talk to a landlord and they would always like, well, it was either one of two things. It's like, I don't want my house destroyed because they think that short-term rentals destroy your places, which is the opposite of what's true. Or like, I don't want you making money on me. So that was like the one that always kind of pissed me off because I'm like, I'm the best tenant you'll ever have. Like you want somebody like me, high credit score, like I'm worth something. You don't have to worry about me destroying your place. So then I was like, well, I could just charge them commission. So I would start converting landlords and owners into me managing, their place as a short-term rental. So come, March, I told her I was thinking about this. I'm like, I'm only doing it if you're willing to, you're part of this. She said, yeah, let's do it. So I quit the firm in May of 2021 with 22 units. And, I was only, I just hit my 2-year anniversary.
How scared were you, man?
It was a little scary, but I had faith that it would work out. And, we grew from 22 units to now we have about 80 under management. And I would say I was maybe a little bit arrogantly confident in quitting the firm, but I grew faster than I expected. So I have zero regrets about doing it. I really like consulting. There's still parts of it that I miss, but I would. Have you,
and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I'm curious, have you replaced your income and more yet from that job, or are you still building that?
If I wasn't reinvesting into the business,
yeah.
I mean, I have the benefit of having a decent nest egg from the firm.
Yeah, you had a great career.
I had a great job.
Yeah.
I spent a lot more money then. Like I had a lot more fun and toys.
You became an entrepreneur quick, and what that means is people think it's amazing, right? But at the end of the day, it means you spend less usually for a while.
If you look at my tax records now, it looks like I made a terrible decision because of all of the costs that goes into it. I mean, we spent $370,000 on furnishings last year, but that's all one-time costs. That's below the line. Like, so I don't have to spend that anymore. But it looks like I haven't made a lot of money, and I'm not paying myself much right now, like because I've invested in my team. Like it went from me and my partner to now I have 5 virtual assistants in Bolivia and the Philippines. I have 4 other full-time employees. I have a 6,000 square foot warehouse, 2 vans. Like that doesn't come from.
Do you own your warehouse?
No, I rent it for a really surprisingly good price over on the North Shore.
Cool.
But we were running this out of my partner's garage until I don't even know. I think June of 2021 we got this, and now we got a 6,000 square foot warehouse that's full. And it's like, how did we do this?
Yeah,
but it's helped.
It's crazy how you grow quick, right? Like we when we reflect and we're having our reflecting moments, it's like, man, how did we just do what we did over those last several years? It's crazy, right?
I've always had a little bit of imposter syndrome for my life.
You're not pushing yourself enough if you don't, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But occasionally, even in consulting, I would be like, I can't believe they paid me the money I did. Yeah. Like even at Ariba when it was only $150 an hour, I'm like, I'm not worth $150 an hour. Yeah. Like that's insane. Like I was making $15.75 an hour as a lab technician.
We talk about that all the time. Like if we include our VAs as well, right? We're around I think 50 full times.
I mean, you guys have grown super fast.
And it's like, what? How do we have it's super cool because you think about, okay, you got that, then you got their families, and then you got your subcontractors and everybody else. And we're feeding a lot of families now, right? Into your $370,000 invested in the furniture. That's just incredible, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, we're tracking to be a $4 million revenue company this year.
beautiful. Congratulations.
Thanks.
It's really cool.
So
You should be proud.
all your listings are higher price listings too. So
Yeah,
I was curious about the revenue.
We charge more than your typical short-term rental because we have super high quality.
Yep.
We have a 4.93 average with over 7,000 reviews across those
Is that the trick?
It's definitely part of it. When I left the firm and got into this, I had said from the beginning, like, why would you book a 4.6 when a 4.9 exists? Like, I knew that short-term rentals were exploding. Like, it was a buzzword. Like, you Google it, like they talked about it everywhere. It was a new, I think about 2006 whenever like, oh, buy a condo and in 6 months just resell it and make a bunch of money. And like, that's where the short-term rental world was at. And people were also like, they had money and they wanted vacation homes. So they were buying in like second home markets. Like, I bought my house in Steamboat for $355,000. I put about $100,000 into it and some sweat equity. And then I sold it in November of 2021 for $770,000. Like, I thought I made a genius move selling it. 9 months later, it was worth $970,000.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people just drove it up because, if you live in LA, you could afford, $900,000 house in Steamboat Springs was like a bargain. So, and they were buying places like that because like, oh, I'll just short-term rent it. Like, I'll make money on this thing. And like millions of other people had the same idea. So what you're seeing now in a lot of vacation rental markets is you have owners panicking because like, they made $100,000 in 2022
Mm-hmm.
or 2021. And then 2022, there's 3 times as many short-term rentals in that market. Now they only made 75,000. Because they didn't have a great product. Like, anybody can make money when demand outstrips supply, right? Like, that's just, any idiot can. If you have the worst product out there, but you're the only one, someone is probably going to buy it.
Yeah.
But now you have this abundance of supply in some of these markets. Why would anybody book that 4.6? So we've been really focused on that high quality, and this doesn't mean like begging for reviews or like giving things away. Like, we almost never issue refunds. My operational background like was really focused on making things work and making it like a great experience. Cause this comes from me traveling for work.
So is the key, I mean, I know it's all of it, right? But is that customer experience what's everything to make it successful for you?
To me, yeah. Like, you have a lot of professional hosts are only focused on acquiring owners. And like, they forget they're in the hospitality industry because they've learned these bad lessons.
I love that word right there for you.
In the last, 2021, 2022, because that demand was outstripping supply. So like, who cares if I have a 4.6 because I'm still booking? And now they're like, oh crap, like, we're not making any money anymore because why would anybody book that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you book it because it's cheap, and that's not the type of person that I want to be my traveler. Like, we have a partnership with Commonplace Coffee here in the city. So we
shout out Commonplace.
So we have whole bean coffee, like single origin whole bean coffee in every one of our places. We have a burr grinder in every one of our places. We have French press, and we have Tirani syrup, and we have a high quality drip machine. Our high end places have espresso machines.
It's crazy you say that. So we were chatting right offline, and we talked about my buddy Fuad.
Mm.
One of his core values is coffee. The exact same type of
So
thought process as you.
It's funny. I don't even like coffee, but I was the CPO of a $400 million coffee roaster.
Wow.
So I learned a lot about coffee from that, and I knew how much I appreciated it. And my girlfriend is like a coffee snob, and she like looks for the best coffee in places, and like, she does not function in the morning until she has coffee. Like, I can't even talk to her in the morning until she goes downstairs and gets coffee. So
her choice or yours? Both?
Both. Yeah, probably both. But
what's her name?
Kelly.
Shout out Kelly with the coffee.
So yeah, she loves her coffee. So, and like that's an important thing because working at this company, I learned about K-Cups and how that coffee is like 6 to 12 months old sitting in there, and it's just gross. So I wanted to provide something so when you wake up in the morning, you have, awesome coffee in there. And, we have a environmental lean too. Like, this kind of ties back to my background. Like, I wanted to save the world a little bit. So we have a very eco-friendly program. Like, we do recycling in every place. We use drops laundry detergent and drops, so it's zero plastic. Like
do you use? I love that, right? Which is creates sustainability, obviously creates margin. But do you market some of that?
A little bit. The eco-friendly side of things, it's again because Airbnb controls the algorithm, and they don't have like a box that says you're eco-friendly. So it's like, how do you stand out with that? So our strategy is like get the guests inside, and then they see like, oh shit, this is awesome, and then convert them into a repeat direct.
Yeah, I was going to get right into that. So you just did it for me. Go. Like, what's the concept here around, right? Obviously the algorithm is huge. New bookings are huge compared to the repeat, right? And building a customer for life. How do you approach that?
The way that I see your channels, so your Airbnbs, booking.com, Vrbo, all of that, the way I look at those channels is their job is my free marketing. Like they introduce me to guests that have never stayed. Now, there's a lot of people that only come to Pittsburgh once. So like those are hard to convert.
Do you pay attention to that data?
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at it, but you don't necessarily know. And the problem in this industry still is like, if you go to a hotel, you like the Westin or you like Hilton's or you like Sheraton's, but in my industry, it's, you like Airbnb or you like Vrbo, which is stupid.
Yeah. You got to get them to, I like HostWise,
that is
right?
just like saying, I love staying in Expedia.
Yeah.
Like that's not a thing.
Yeah. It's literally a website. You click a button.
Right. So,
I mean, obviously there's more to it, but.
So this is like, the consumer mindset still has to change. Like they have to get out of that. I'm booking an Airbnb. That's why branding is super important for me, because I want them like not over the top. Like I don't want them to walk in and feel like they're in an advertisement, but like the HostWise logos on thing. Like I have HostWise coasters. I have a magnet. We have like the DAC app that, they download. So I want them to know they're staying in a HostWise, just like I want, a hotel wants them to know they're staying in a Westin property. So when they come back, they're looking at that HostWise, and we have HostWise logos on like our listings so they can see that picture.
So your goal is to get them off of the booking sites once they've stayed with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Airbnb and Miss Vrbo, for introducing me to these people. Like they're mine now. So we use StayFi in all of our properties, which is it's a Wi-Fi device, but it's a portal that allows us to capture the guest information. Now they don't have to, if they don't want to opt in, not like we're forcing marketing upon them, but if they opt in, we have their information and then we can remarket.
Blast some emails and
things like that.
Do you give a discount when they book direct?
Yeah, you say like any of our returning guests, they get a 10% off coupon. And we set those rates lower than those channels too. Right now,
so they're getting 10% off of a lower rate as it is.
Yeah. So like our price is already a few dollars cheaper than Airbnb or Vrbo, and then you save an additional 10% on that. Like I actually make a little bit less on direct booking right now, but that's by design because I want those people to never go to the Airbnb website again. I want them to stay. And the way we treat our
you want to capture the guest of like if you're coming to Pittsburgh and you stayed with you one time, like. The rest of their lives coming here.
Yeah, I'm insulted if you don't stay with me again. And, we treat HostWise as a brand. It's not that every place is the same. Like everything is unique. Like we want it to be a unique vibe.
Yeah, you have 80 homes. They're obviously very different, especially most of them are probably older homes in Pittsburgh that you create your touch, but.
Right. But it exudes Pittsburgh. Like when you walk in, like we have, there's Pittsburgh artwork, local Pittsburgh artists.
How much do you generally spend on setup? You said you spent $370 on furniture, right? There's design. It
depends. We can set up a one bedroom for $7,000, but then we set up a 4-bedroom Lux place for $30,000. Like it kind of just depends on the market. Like I have some units downtown that are 700 square foot units, and we can set those up for $4,000. So we want them. Our unofficial motto, which is kind of our official motto at this point, is walk in and say wow. Like if that guest walks in and it's just like, like we failed. Like to the point where, I don't know if you stayed in a Westin, but the Westin, there's the Westin smell. Like you walk in and it's got that like orange ginger scent or whatever it is. So we actually use Apotheke reed diffusers in each one of our units that has the same smell. So if you walk in, you have the same smell in each one of these places.
How do you
down to the details?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, this is incredible stuff. So
it's that
everyone across the country should listen to this because you should be I mean, educating more and more, because this is incredible.
I'm starting to do some, I moderated a panel at the single family rental in Miami.
Right. That's awesome.
I was on a panel for marketing at the IMN one in January. Like, I share some of my knowledge, just
that's great, man,
because I want this industry to get better. Like,
how do you I'm sorry, I'm diving right back into this because this is awesome. How do you evaluate your ROI, right? Because you're a numbers guy, I'm a numbers guy, I'm a CPA by trade, spent 10 years in that industry. How do you evaluate, right? Because you're thinking about it and you play the arbitrage game, and so you're looking at it, you got a cost immediately right there, so you're creating a margin, you have to overcome certain margin, plus you're bringing in this big investment on the front end, naturally, right? Because you're going to create this place to create the return, and you're banking on that return customer, right? The brand, the reviews, everything you just touched on, which is gold. How do you evaluate that from a numbers perspective, and what do you look to try to do from all of that standpoint?
It's a great question, and I wish I had a really intelligent answer for you, but it's hard, right? Because it's when you're building a brand, it's hard to say like it's that one thing. Like, do I know for sure that the amount of money I spend on coffee, because it's expensive. I could use K-Cups that cost next to nothing, but I'm choosing to use the best, best coffee in the city in my properties. Like, can I guarantee that creates a return? I don't know. If that was the only thing, if I was A/B testing and like had coffee in one and not coffee in the other, maybe I could dial that in. But like, I have that. I have the eco-friendly angle. Like, we have premium toiletries. Like, we have great linens. Like, our places are spotlessly clean. It's that whole, like, I think it's like the 1 + 1 = 10 kind of situation.
But the 10's down the line.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm building this brand. So I'm investing in these things. 2 years from now, maybe I dial some things back. Like, maybe it's not worth using. Maybe I shouldn't have Torani syrup everywhere. Maybe nobody really cares about Torani syrup. But in that picture,
are you doing surveys?
I actually have a survey written that is part of where I'm going to send to guests. I just haven't sent it out yet because I do
check it out, right?
Know that. Yeah. Like, we've been.
Are you actually staying here because of my coffee? I mean, I'm somewhat being facetious,
but that is one of my survey questions. Like, do you care about this? But it shows up in like the unofficial survey that I have is reviews, right? Like, we have top reviews.
Which you have incredible reviews. How many did you say you had?
We have over 7,000 and we have a 4.93 average.
Congratulations.
Like, so at that IMN conference in January, when I sat on stage and I said that, it's like 300 people in the room. There was an audible gasp. You could see people on the phone. I got a website spike because people are like, "This guy's full of shit."
Yeah,
like, there's no way you can have 70 some units and have a 4.93. Like, that's like perfection in this industry. But it's because of, I think we provide a good value. So even though we're more expensive, we're a deal. Like,
what made you? You know what I mean? Was there a shiny? Was there a I don't know the right words. I'm not a freaking languageist, but. Was there an aha moment around like, I've got to really focus on brand, really focus on the customer service aspect of like, I'm going to invest in expensive coffee. I'm going to go eco. Like, this is going to work for me. I know it. Was there an aha moment, or is it just your upbringing and your lifestyle and what you think?
Me. Like, it's just what I like. Like, I'm not a bougie person by nature by any means, but like, I traveled I've been to over 50 countries. Like, I've been to 46 states. Like, I grew up riding around in a motorhome, and which is wild given I didn't fly until I was 19 years old. But I've always been addicted to that travel. And then, like, even in consulting and traveling, like, I wanted it to be easy. Like, I stayed in short-term rentals, and like, you have to go across the street to the bodega and you have to meet this person, but he's only there from 5 p.m. to 7:15 p.m. So you have to get the key at that time. And then whenever you go up, like, you don't use this room, or this is off limits. And there's just a lot of complexity in the industry. And, touching on that doubt, whenever you get to the door and the lock doesn't work, you think you got scammed, or I think a lot of people think this. It's like, when you get there, you're like, I hope it's clean. Like, I've never gone to a hotel and I'm like, man, I hope my key works and I hope it's clean. Like, that's just a non-starter, right? Yeah.
And the problem to your point, you've mentioned it multiple times. I'm just thinking out loud, like, the problem with Expedia.com, to your point of like the Airbnb, it's not a short-term rental, it's an Airbnb. It's like, it's anybody's guess what you're going to want. And it can always be that because it's a platform that anybody can get on.
There's low barrier to entry. Like we talked about before, like, you could take pictures of this, throw a mattress on the floor and list this thing tomorrow. And Airbnb is pushing that. Like, they they are saying it's super easy. Like, list your place today, and you literally can. You
Why are they doing that?
Capture revenue share. Like for them, it's better to make $20 than that $20 go to a hotel chain, right? So they don't
grow user base, grow platform, grow market share.
But okay. If enough people have a bad experience with short-term rentals, they never use it again. Like, you see it in the national groups and like news
why aren't the experts in these? I mean, obviously, right? You think about Airbnb, you think about the talent power they have running those shows. Mm-hmm. Why aren't they thinking about a standpoint of like, if we put too many of these people that are just, you know, hey, come stay with me and sleep in my bed next to me, right? Like to Brian's point offline, right? Like, won't that hurt the brand long term? Or are they not thinking about that?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it does, but I think they have decided that the horse is out of the barn, and enough people have stayed in a short-term rental. Like, yeah, there's people that have a bad experience and they say they're never going to come back again, but 5 years from now, they are. Like, they'll come back because they've talked to other people of like, oh no, I had an awesome time. Like, I stayed in this property in Pittsburgh and they had whole bean coffee. Like, the hotel I stayed in had 6-month-old K-cups. It was gross. Like, this guy had Torani syrup in his. So someone will be like,
I love that 8-month-old stale bagel in the lobby of Holiday Inn.
Let me give you another chance. Now, there is still a value in hotels. Like, I stay in a lot of hotels because of the consistency that I know like, if I stay in a Westin, I know what I'm going to get. Like, and that's how we treat HostWise. Like, I don't care what
less front end work for you when you're traveling because which is your point around HostWise, right? Exactly. Like, if I know I'm staying at HostWise, this is what I'm going to get every time.
We don't make guests sign agreements. Like, we don't. Like, it is just like booking a hotel. You don't have to meet me. Like, we use this DAC app that you can swipe to unlock your house. Like, the code is automatically generated. So when we first started, I care about the safety of my team. I have a lot of mostly women cleaners, and it's dangerous potentially to walk into a situation or have a guest walk in on you. Like, my partner could tell you lots of stories. Like, this was 2021 before we had our system.
Your partner, that's the original. We just talked a lot about it. That's who your partner is?
Yeah. Okay. Stephanie.
Okay.
So she,
man, that's amazing.
She had a situation where she was cleaning, and like, these guys showed up. Our check-in's 4:00. They showed up at like 2:30. She's still cleaning, and she's like trying to get done. She's a very friendly person by nature. She's like, yeah, good, drop your stuff off. Like, it's fine. Like, no big deal. The guy's like, oh, I got to use the bathroom. It comes down naked, like in there. And I'm like, this is messed up. Like, luckily nothing happened. He was just a drunk asshole. But, that was scary to me. So I was we got to figure out how to automate all of these locks. So we now have adopted this software where you can't get in. Like, the lock doesn't work until check-in time, and then it automatically expires at checkout time. So there's no, like, the guests can't get in early. Like, they could, in theory, stay late, but that's not as bad because you open the door, somebody's in there, you just leave. And you message the guest, say, hey, checkout's 11, get out. But like, that safety aspect of this is really important. But I think about that from a traveler perspective too. Like, if you have a key, you don't know how many copies of that key is there. Like, if you punch in your code, it's like, how many other people have used that code? Like, that's pretty terrifying that someone could just walk into your place. So that safety aspect of it is also super important. And you don't really worry about that at a hotel. Like, I've had someone walk in on me in a hotel room once because, the front desk, the person told them the wrong room. They didn't follow their procedure. Like, we've tried to eliminate human error as much as we can. Like, I don't have to program codes. Like, worst case, the code doesn't work, but then we can remotely, reflash it or generate a backup.
What locks do you use?
We use Yale locks.
Nice.
Pretty much everywhere.
I think we're moving to that too.
I have a few Schlage, or however you say it, in them, but they're not as stable. The Yale locks work great, and they're all built on most of them are Z-Wave platforms. So we have a SmartThings hub in each one, but that integrates with the DAC app. So like, if we have an Ecobee or Nest thermostat, it integrates so you can like control the thermostat from there. If we have smart switches, you can turn your lights on and off with it. It's got our recommendations engine. So we have DAC is just, I'm a advisor for DAC. So I'm not on like their board or anything, but like I have a good relationship with their folks, and I give them my ideas on how to make the app better. So we have a recommendations engine and a kind of, it's evolving to a discount thing. So like a guest traveling with me can show the app to to like their server and get like a free app. So like the Foundry on the north side, we have a discount for our guests. If they show up, they can show the DAC app and they can either scan the QR code or just show them we have a discount. And the idea behind that is I would like to have 20, 30 bars and restaurants around the city. So now, you know, I'm driving business to the best restaurants and best bars and breweries and whatnot. The guests get something out of it. You're
creating a win-win.
The business gets something out of it. And that guest is like, why would I stay anywhere else? Like, I just got 4 free beers by staying in that HostWise property. So I think there's a lot to be said.
And that's huge too, right? From a market share perspective, right? The more you have in that local market, the more power you have with restaurants, with operational leverage.
Like I love a good deal. Like, I love happy hour.
It's principle half the time, right?
Half the reason I moved from Boston is because happy hour is illegal up there. You can't get 50% off beer. So here you can have that. And like I'm always searching out good deals, happy hours. Yeah. Like I'm a foodie. Like we say in our thing, like we're cocktail enthusiasts, like foodies, like beer aficionados. Like we want people to stay with us because I'm in the hospitality industry at the end of the day. Like I have 2 clients. I have the owners and I have the guests. And, the owners, my job is to make them as much money as possible. But for the guests, my job is to provide the best experience possible.
I've got one more question in case you have any. Then I don't want to wind it down. But, I was thinking about risk in your business, the way you run it, right? And I get to that owner piece, right? You invest all this money in the furniture and design and coffee and these relationships, and at the end of the day, there's a risk that an owner could pull that contract from you. How are you kind of mitigating that risk? Is it a long-term arbitrage contract? Is it right?
It's a good question. I'm overly confident perhaps, but I know that I have the best product in the city. I can show you the numbers. Like we operate 8 of the top 12 revenue properties from a 2-bedroom standpoint.
But what happens if the owner pulls the lease from you?
If they do, they pay for the furnishings. So I don't really have a lot of cost tied into it. Like we'll buy the furniture and we'll stage it, but like they pay for that. So if they decide to walk away from it, like that's their risk. But
I think you meant the ones that you were leasing from.
Well,
that's what he's talking
about. My arbitrage unit. So I only have like 20 some arbitrage at this point. Like most of mine are managed or
yeah. So I was thinking you were more on the arbitrage side. So you have arbitrage, but you're more on arbitrage, right? We talked about arbitrage is you sign a long-term lease, you take over, and your job is to make more money than what you're paying in a lease plus.
My job
or you just manage for a fee and say, hey, Mr. Owner, I'm going to do this for you. This is what you're going to get.
Right.
You're going to get you're going to get this, and I get my percentages.
Right. My pitch to owners is
makes a lot of sense. I was thinking you were a lot more on the arbitrage side.
Especially
they both could work. I mean,
my profit margins are way higher for arbitrage, but there's more risk. Just like
you get all the upside on that side where you're sharing it with the owners on the management side.
Right. But I have no risk on the managing side of it. So if they if the economy crashes,
they take more risk and more reward.
Right.
It's the same concept we do with our investment strategy.
So I call it the 3-legged stool. Like I have my arbitrage properties, I have the properties that I own, and I have the properties that I manage. So no matter what happens, like I'm going to be okay with it. If the economy gets worse, then I'm still managing properties. I don't have a lot of costs out for that. Like obviously I have my overhead with the team and the warehouse and things like that.
Yeah. So on the management side, they pull it.
You
answered my own question. Brian, you got anything here?
One of the ones was more like you obviously traveled all over the world, all over the country. How much thought did you put in to Pittsburgh versus other cities? Like, did you?
That's a good question. I mean, I knew the market here well, so that's the primary reason. And like my goal for HostWise is to be a national brand. Like I want to have 500 units in 5 years. Like I want to have over 1,000 units. I'm in Pittsburgh because this is my testing ground. Like I wanted to prove this was a real business. This was a scalable business. And figure out how to work out our kinks. Like there's a lot of operational things that have to go into having a 4.93. Like there's the cleaning side of it, but there's also just like all of the communication and having everything perfect. Because if a guest walks in and it hasn't been cleaned or it hasn't been cleaned properly, like I'm not getting a 5-star review. And those a bad review costs you thousands of dollars because that you get enough of those and you get into that 4.7 range. I did an analysis here in Pittsburgh. Like properties that have a 4.85 and higher do 15 to 20% more revenue than places below that. Like there is a significant premium put on higher reviewed properties because you have more confidence, right? What people don't realize at first, if they're new to Airbnbs, they're used to like the bubbles on TripAdvisor. So like a 4.5 on TripAdvisor is a great place. Like if I book a 4.5 Airbnb, I assume that there are mouse droppings and cockroaches in the place. Like a 4.5 is a disgusting.
That's crazy.
problem.
I never even, yeah.
Like never in a million years. Like no one in my industry will book anything rated lower than a 4.7. Like they won't book their own places if they're below that. Like they're seeking out the higher rated places. So that's why I think as this market continues to evolve, like having those high reviews are going to be better and better because someone booked a 4.6 and they're like, oh, this is terrible. And they book a 4.9 and it's a breath of fresh air. So we're really focused on that. But
and probably those 4.6s that have the bugs, right? They're buying the reviews.
Or they're dying. Like no one's booking them anymore. Like they're renting them out for $60 a night because they were getting $130 a night a year and a half ago because they were, one of the last ones left in town. And
you had to.
Being the last one left is still better than sleeping on the street as a guest. So they book it, have a bad experience. But now, like, there's enough supply that they're not being booked anymore. And these professional operators are panicking because they're not operating at a level and they're not making money anymore.
So you said, right, obviously, you touched on it where you want to go in the next 5 years. You want to be a national brand. You want to get to 500 to 1,000.
Yep.
I love that. There's no question in my mind you're going to get there. Anything you want to add to my patented last couple questions here? Where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, the goal was growing here in Pittsburgh. We're confident that it works. And now it's that lift and shift. I don't know which markets I'm going to move into, but my plan is to all these operators that are not doing well, and probably in like that 15 to 20 range, they could even be doing well, but they've hit a wall. Like they can't grow because they have to hire somebody. Now they hire somebody, they're not paying themselves anymore. Like I had the benefit of having enough money that I could kind of get through my gray area where I wasn't making a lot. And now, the business is starting to generate more. These people are going to be stuck, I think. And my plan is to hire them as an employee of mine and teach them our ways and then grow from there. So finding the right people.
People's everything. We know that.
Markets where I don't actually have to buy their business. I kind of buy them and help them make more money, pay them, a couple $1,000.
And bring them into your brand.
Right. And that's how you grow the brand. Rebranded as HostWise. So now when somebody starts traveling, like they see HostWise, like, oh, I stayed in a HostWise property in Pittsburgh. Or I stayed in a HostWise property in Cleveland, whatever it is. And that's how you grow that brand, like allegiance, by having a great product. What you see with a lot of the professional operators, they don't really have a brand. Like you look at the national players, like the Vicasas of the world or Evolve. Like if Vicasa stock opened they were a SPAC and it was like over $10 a share. They're at 80 cents a share now, because there's no reason to book another Vicasa because you booked two of them and they were a completely different experience. For us, it's consistent. It's like I book a Westin because I know what I'm getting.
Which probably means slower growth. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's better because there's a blend, like I'm willing to sacrifice a tiny bit of quality for growth, but like I'm not willing to sacrifice like my ethics and my morals for it. Like,
I love that.
I want the guest experience to be paramount because that might be that person's only vacation, right, for the year. And if you ruin it because you suck at your job and the place is dirty and it's like they don't feel good.
Man,
like,
you're hitting at every point here for me, right? Because again, like you've got to care.
Yeah. Sometimes they say we care too much. Like it's like
you can never care too much, right?
I mean, that person's insane. Like I don't believe the customer's always right. We do have irrational guests sometimes. Like we had a guest that just checked out last week that was disappointed because we didn't have fresh eggs in the fridge. It's like, okay. Because he's like, yeah, we were just, I'm like, sorry that our premium tea and coffee selection spice rack wasn't good enough for you. Like we'll consider eggs. What I like about this industry is I get to do things from a keyboard. Because if I was talking to people, I would probably be out of business by now. Like,
you can think through the answer every time.
Right. I can be strategic. I want to.
It's almost like you could hide behind a keyboard, but in a good way, and not the memes out there in the negative way where you're just crushing people.
I always joke that I'm like the Wizard of Oz. Like I'm a man behind the curtain. I hate meeting guests in person. I don't want them to necessarily know if I exist or not. Like because I want it to be like just the HostWise product. But occasionally I meet people for whatever reason, because I have to go fix something because like my team is busy, and they're like, "Oh, you actually exist." I'm like, "Yep." I'm like that chat on the profile is actually me. But I just want to be like behind the curtain and like nobody sees me and I can think through my responses. But like I have a customer service angle. Like,
love it, man.
I do enjoy it. Just occasional irrational person. Like in my head, I'm like, you are the dumbest person I've ever interacted with. But I don't tell them that.
So maybe the dumbest person in the world that's out there, right? Like, what's the best advice you can give everybody listening right now?
So I think, I was thinking about this last night. I've made a lot of decisions in life that people think were risky, right? Like it was funny. Whenever I left Ariba for A&M, my grandfather's 93 years old now. And I was sitting there with him and I told him that I'm leaving. He's like, well, that's dumb. Why would you do that? I'm like, Pap, I doubled my salary. He's like, well, they were nice enough to give you a job. He's like, why would you leave? And one of my colleagues at Ariba, like we both got offers from A&M. We had no idea. I interviewed with A&M on Wednesday and they hired me on Saturday because they were growing that fast. And my friend decided not to take it. She's like, I don't know who they are. I like my people here. And I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like I actually didn't even fully understand the offer. Like my salary was like doubled, but then there was another 50% bonus on top of it that wasn't really explained. So like my very first week, like my new colleagues were explaining it to me and I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, I can make 250,000 this year. I'm like, I quit for 100. Like, this is awesome. So I think a lot of people are afraid to take that
fear,
that leap a little bit. And this isn't saying like take a risk. Like,
no, it is, and you can say it.
I like playing poker, right? Yeah. But poker's not gambling to me. Like, there's a little bit of gambling there, but like roulette is gambling. So I'm not like, people shouldn't just put it on 10 on roulette. They should go play poker. there's a risk you could still lose all of your money, but you have control of your fate. So I think of it, that way, where if you want to be, everybody defines success a different way, right? Like some people having success is having 8 kids, like, more power to you. For me, I want financial freedom. I want to be able to do whatever I want when I want. I've had this soft goal since I was in my early 20s of retiring by 45. And retiring doesn't mean disappearing and just, drinking and getting fat. It's like I want to be able to do whatever I want at that point. So that's what I've been striving for pretty much, since I started working. But you don't get there by doing the 9 to 5 and working your way up. Like you got to bounce around, take opportunities, but not, don't put it all on 10 or whatever. Like play poker with your career, because that's how you can be successful.
Man, I love that. This has been incredible. Obviously, I think we know the answer to this, but like, where can we find you?
So HostWise.co that's where anybody that has a short-term, they want to get into the short-term rentals. Like I work with mostly investors. If people are interested in that, or if they already have a short-term rental, what they're not doing as well. I'll use the Taylor Swift weekend coming up as an example. So the market in Pittsburgh, market RevPAR. So it's revenue per night. It's basically like that's how much money you make. The RevPAR is $268 for that weekend. Ours is over 800. I'm making, over 3x what the average Airbnb host is in Pittsburgh. It's insane. It's because people don't understand how much money they can make on this and they don't manage their pricing properly. Like so doing those numbers, like hosts in this city for just next weekend left over $1 million on the table because they didn't charge enough. So if you have a short-term rental and it's not making a lot of money, like come talk to me. We turn down 75% of the properties that are brought to us because it doesn't fit our brand. Like that brand standard is really important. But if they have a great short-term rental or a potential property, like let's talk, let's see it. And then anyone that's traveling, we have HostWiseStays.com. I didn't like the idea of a guest coming to HostWise.co to book a trip because like it's a different product. Like I don't want the guest to see how I'm maximizing revenue because then they're like, well, shit, I'm paying him too much money to stay in that place. Like I want them to go to HostWise Stays and see the benefits there. And I want our potential clients to go to hostwise.co and see from there. And we have an earnings tab on there, which is plugged into AirDNA. And you can go on our website and put in your address, number of bedrooms and bathrooms. It'll generate an approximate revenue number.
Do you sleep?
Not a lot.
Yeah, I could tell.
You can tell I have an active imagination.
I love it, man. It's incredible.
Every day, every day when I wake up, it's fun. Like, unless something bad
gotta love what you do.
But it doesn't happen. But yeah, love what you do is extremely important. Like, every day in this career now is fun. Like, I was kind of joking when Powerball got to like 400 million or whatever. Like, if I still worked at the firm and I hit 400 million, I was gone. I wouldn't even have called in sick. I would just probably disappeared. But I was like, if I win that money with HostWise, like, I'm just going to grow the business.
Yeah, you're just going to use the money and
like,
invest it back in.
I'm going to be like the Weston of the short-term rental world. So I think that's a good sign. I'm very passionate about the industry, and I'm passionate about the company and my people. So I'm having fun, but I don't sleep a lot.
Yeah, I can tell, man. I love it. Brian, anything to add, man?
No, man, that was all. Everything there was incredible. Yeah,
it was a pleasure.
It's
follow-ups. Reach out on Instagram.
I'll tell you what, man. I'll give one piece of advice here for anybody listening. Like, to his point, if you're interested in a short-term space, give him a buzz. Incredible amount of wisdom here, and I can only imagine you can go on for days and days helping people there. If you're traveling to Pittsburgh, of course, hostwisestays.com. You're probably going to get a better experience than staying downtown at any of the nicest hotels at this point. So, do yourselves a favor. Reach out to this man. Appreciate you having me, bro.
Thank you very much.
This was fun. This was incredible. So thank you.